So for this week on CyberSchool, we're going to talk about TAA compliance and what that actually means. This is a big thing that we've touted at CyberData for the last few years on us being TAA compliant, and it's something that I honestly never really understood. And I always just kind of, mention that when I'm, kind of in the spiel about CyberData is that we're TAA compliant, which is really good for getting products and bids into different government related contracts and even just some contracts with non-governmental agencies. And I figured it would be a good topic for cyber school to actually talk about what TAA compliance actually means. So what is TAA to start off? Well, that's the Trade Agreements Act, and that was enacted in July of 1979. It actually builds upon the Trades Act of 1974, which is just an early trades act that agreed on basically international trade. In 1979, they kind of updated that and came out with the Trade Agreements Act. And typically, when you're dealing with anything that's going to be TAA certified, is the products are going to be produced in the United States of America. But let's talk a little bit more about specifics with this whole agreement. It's of course an international trade agreement, and specifically according to all the legalese, and of course, this is, it's a government, in action, so it's all encrypted and kind of legalese, and you really should be a lawyer to, read through this unless you want to put yourself to sleep. The major stipulations to being TAA compliant means that quote unquote final products cannot be made in China, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Malaysia, Pakistan, Russia, or Sri Lanka. And typically, most products are supposed to be substantially transformed in the US or other specific countries. It's honestly easier rather than state the countries that where products can be manufactured or transformed that are TAA compliant. There's a huge long list. I think a lot of the stuff that I was looking at during the research for this video was almost 178 countries. That would take me 10 minutes to read through all the different countries that are TAA compliant. It's honestly easier to state the ones that are not TAA compliant, which was those above countries. Everything else is pretty much TAA compliant. There are some that kind of don't fall into there, but the majority of countries in the world are TAA compliant. And at least 50% of the overall manufacture of cost, so actually what goes into the cost of the actual product itself, has to originate from the US or a specific country. And as I mentioned, it's just easier to state the countries that are not TAA compliant than countries that actually are TAA compliant. So what is TAA compliance and why is it actually important? Well, TAA compliance is, of course, just a certification that a lot of different businesses can go out and apply for when they're going through and they're looking at all the different certifications that their business can get when you're a manufacturer. And with TAA compliance, it's actually required for federal procurements. If a government agency, whether it's, the FAA, the DoD, the Department of Education, any of our multitude of government agencies, if they're going out and putting out a contract for anything above $180,000, and that value might change, they cannot purchase non-TAA compliant products. So for the majority of government bids, let's be real, because not that many, government contracts are going out for less than, 100, basically $200,000. Almost every product that a government agency is going to use has to be TAA compliant. So if you're going out for all of these different government bids and you're trying to win this a government contract, whether it's again for the Department of Defense, the FAA, the Air Force, any of our military branches, or even Department of Education, you're probably going to be dealing with a bid that's like, an opportunity or a contract over essentially $200,000. You don't want to spec in any non-TAA compliant products because that immediately just cancels out your potential bid on that contract just because it's a non-TAA compliant equipment. So when you're going and trying to make a contract for one of these different GSA schedules, basically just how governments purchase things, having a product or product line that is TAA compliant is absolutely essential. So that way you can actually get the bid. Because again, if it's not TAA compliant, Sure, out of the question. And, like I mentioned, it's every single government agency, whether it's, the FBI, CIA, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and then, of course, all the other fun stuff, Department of Agriculture, the like the DOT, what have you. Every government agency is going to have some level of TAA compliance for any of the equipment that they're going to be using. So working with companies and manufacturers that are TAA compliant are super duper important for getting out there and winning those bids. So let's talk about CyberData and TAA compliance now that we kind of understand it. So nearly all of CyberData products are going to be TAA compliant. Only our 2-port PoE switches are not technically compliant with TAA, but every other product is going to be. So whether you're dealing with your intercoms, your speakers, your IP to analog paging options, or your full IP-based loudspeakers or your amplifiers, everything is going to be TAA compliant and is easy to drop into any of these potential government bids. And this allows CyberData to actually market our products specifically towards government use cases. It's not a market that we're super duper heavy in, because there's a lot of other stipulations and compliance that come in with going for different government use cases, especially a lot of, FIP certifications and other security certifications. But a TAA compliance is a good groundwork because a lot of the other certifications can kind of be waived off where, they can do an exemption form and the people in the government can fill out a whole bunch of paperwork to exempt certain rules that they have. They can't do that for TAA compliance. They have to have TAA compliance for any bids, and that's one of the must-haves, not should-haves. So that's one of the things that makes CyberData products really, really good for many different government contracts and has actually helped us, win a whole bunch of different government contracts through a lot of our reseller network and some of our, even just at distributor levels, we've won a lot of these different big governmental contracts with different government agencies because of this TAA compliance. If we didn't have something like that, they couldn't even offer our products into an environment like that. So at the end of the day, TAA compliance is, and when we kind of crystallize it or distill it down, any of the products that are going to be TAA compliant must be made in the US or specific designated countries. And they're going to be required for any governmental contracts or GSA contracts. And just about every single CyberData product is going to be compliant with that. So if you're speccing out an option for a paging system for any governmental agency, you can have confidence that any CyberData product that you're going to quote and put into your bid is going to be TAA compliant, and you can use that with confidence, which makes us a really strong offering for any government contracts that you might come across and that you might try to bid on.
Thank you for watching this edition of CyberSchool. If you have any questions, please get in contact with our sales department. They are available by email at sales@cyberdata.net or by phone at 831-373-2601 extension 334. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like this from CyberData.